And just that quick, I am back to talk about another dive that I did while down in Cave Country, Florida, this past week, doing my rebreather training. We were told about a place called Ruth Springs. It's very tight. This picture is what it looks like, except now there's actual steps instead of whatever that is up there. But there's no steps down to the water, so it's pretty tricky entrance, especially since the water level was actually almost up to the top there, and it made for a very slippery and tricky entry. It's also one of the dirtier of the springs. It does have some flow, but not as bad as some of the other springs in the area. It is tight. We were told it was going to be tight. We were told it was going to be silty. They were not wrong. It is not a very long cave system. If you rewind back to the map, it's roughly 1,200 feet to the back. At least that's what the map shows. There's a opening to the surface, not a viable exit, but an opening at around 920-ish feet. That's how far back we got. Normally 900 feet takes us about, 15 minutes to swim. This took 35 minutes, just over 35 minutes. It's that slow going in some areas, and it's that tight in most of it. Just the entrance alone should give you an indication of what we're going to be looking at here. The bottom of this cave system varied quite a bit from sand, like beach sand. It was very, very gritty sand, to very silty, very fine sediment, to very rocky, covered in tree branches and other debris near the entrance and opening at 920 odd feet. It is a very interesting cave system. I don't recommend people go here unless they like, this really tight, dirty stuff. As you can see, the visibility is not great to begin with. I'd say at best you have somewhere around 30 to 40 feet. But it goes away very quickly. It's inevitable when you dive something this tight to not silt things up even a little bit. I did leave all of the video that I took in this video. The videos that I looked up or that I watched on YouTube, and there aren't a lot for this cave system, are very short, and they're very edited. I don't believe they really portray what you would be getting into by going into a cave like this. So I left it in, despite how it may appear to some people. But I wanted to make sure that everyone watching this video was well aware of what they're getting into if they plan on doing a dive like this or plan on diving this particular location. Because I'm sure a lot of people out there like me like to do their research before going somewhere new, and I think this video will give you a very good representation of what you're going to encounter in Ruth Springs. There I just covered my light to make sure my dive buddy was still behind me. you'll see that periodically in most of my videos where I'm cave diving. So, as I mentioned, this isn't one of those caves for everyone. It can be very dangerous if you aren't used to this kind of diving. Even I think some cave divers, cave certified divers, would opt out of diving in a location like this. But as I've mentioned in the past, this is, I don't know, this is what attracts my attention when I hear about systems like these. I want to go check them out. But as I said, it doesn't come without danger, without, the need for a very calm and collected mindset, because you are going to run into trouble. It's not a question of if, it is pretty much a guarantee. I think I probably lost complete visibility. I lost track. I couldn't even tell you how many times I had a free flow at about 800 feet, trying to crawl my way underneath a ledge with a sandy bottom. My second stage on my right tank was scooped up some sand, and I think from me trying to pull my way through the restriction, it caused the regulator to start free flowing. And if you pay attention in the video to the sound, then you might not be able to hear it over my talking, but I'll try to remember to point it out. It's on the way out about 800 feet or so, 850 feet. And, within a matter of seconds, I realize what's going on. I shut it down and continue on diving. Not a big deal if, if you can problem solve under pressure, I guess is the best way to put it. It turned out to be a really good dive. The entrance was easier. I should say it was less mucked up, less. I got to see a lot more. I was the lead diver. I spent the majority of my time not recording on the way in. I wanted to really focus on not silting it up for my dive buddy. And then on the way out, I was in the back. I was the rear diver, so I wasn't too as concerned about destroying visibility. So I recorded a good deal of the exit. So you'll get to see what it's really like trying to get out of a cave like this, and having the inevitable dust cloud follow you out, and because it's going with the flow of water, so anything you disturb is going to be either going out ahead of you or following you very closely behind. Nonetheless, very, very cool dive. It is definitely one of the more interesting dives that I've done. And like I said, Charlie, my buddy, dive buddy, and I have done some pretty interesting ones, but this one's right up there. Speaking of flow, like I said, this cave system does have a pretty decent flow, not the strongest cave flow that I've encountered, but it is strong enough that you definitely feel it pushing you out, and that just makes the exit that much more difficult in terms of trying to minimize the silt. As you can see just there previously, I had to pull myself through that opening because water was coming out quite a bit stronger than in the more open areas. I found that sometimes just pulling your way through or past something creates a lot less silt than trying to even frog kick your way through that space. So things to think about. Options, what works best for different situations. As far as problem solving and having the right mindset when it comes to doing these types of dives, I wanted to talk about an incident that I promised in my last video I would go over in more detail. Again, I'm sharing this for everyone else's benefit. I obviously lived it and learned a lot from it. It was an experience, to say the least, that I will remember for a long time. So I'll get right to it. During my time in Florida diving these caves, I had the opportunity to dive lower Orange Sink. It is considered a very technical, very dangerous dive by many. I found it to be very enjoyable, even with the incident that took place. While making my way down, I at about 125, 130 feet. The circuit, by the way, is between 160 and 170 feet at its lowest point, and I was at about 125 or 130 feet or so, and I made a wrong turn and worked my way through several cracks in the rocks, back about 30-40 feet or so, I'm guesstimating, and found my way to a restriction that looked fairly tight. And after having gone through it, I realized that there was no way that my dive buddy was going to squeeze through there. I'm in a Sidewinder with little LP50s. He's diving a sidekick with, I believe, a Steel 72 on his left side. So his profile is a little bit wider, and I didn't expect him to be able to get through there. Also, I realized that there's no way we were going in the right direction. So right about that time, he decided to turn to dive, presumably because he didn't feel he could get through there. We did obviously debrief after the fact, and he told me that when visibility went to 0, he was done working his way in. Fortunately, we communicated well enough to turn the dive. I think we had both had enough of those tight, very, very tight places with increasingly or um, diminishing visibility by the second. By the time we turned to dive, we could barely see several inches in front of our face. And communicating to turn around was actually pretty difficult. But we both got on the same page pretty quickly, and he had not gone through that restriction, so he was able to back up and get himself turned around. And I then proceeded to try to work my way back through that very tight restriction to try to get back into the passageway that we had been slowly working our way through. I'm going to pause for a second here. You see how bad it's getting. Visibility is very quickly going away. And again, I included all of this because I wanted people to be very aware of what they're going to be potentially encountering. As you can see, as soon as visibility pretty much disappeared, I very calmly looked over to the left where I had last seen the line and put my hand on it just to make sure I didn't lose my way. I think here, crawling, yep, this is where I have the free flow. And I quickly jump on the line so that I didn't lose it. I shut down the tank and shook it a little bit, turned it back on, and went about my merry way. Fortunately for me, I have a very considerate dive buddy who realized I wasn't behind him pretty quickly, turned around and waited for me. So, back to my story and problem solving. Get yourself out of troubles. I start poking my head through this opening, and at this point, like I said, I can only see about 6 inches in front of me. I can't even see the opening anymore. So I follow the line that was in my left hand back out towards where it led me, and I reached out with my right hand, and so I had the reel in my left hand, reached out with my right hand, and felt for an opening big enough for me to fit through. I was afraid that that the line could have crawled or pulled its way through 2 different rocks or something like that, and that I'd be following it into the wrong space, and then I would get hopelessly stuck. So I felt around, made sure that the opening was what felt like the same hole I was had gone through, and the line obviously went through there, so I was pretty confident that that's where I needed to go. But I'll be honest, I was not sure. I literally could not see anything. As a matter of fact, I'll backtrack a little bit. When Charlie signaled for me to end the dive, we were about 2 feet from each other, and I could not see him. I could only see a faint glow from his light. But we communicated, and we started heading out. So I start to push my body through the opening that I believe is my exit, and I get to about my stomach. I get in about as far as my stomach, and then I stop. I can't move further. I can't figure out why. And at this point, I'm in a head down position. So I have to go down through this hole to get back into the passageway that I took to get there. So I'm face down in what I believe is the same hole that I went through, and I can't see anything in front of me. I have the line in my left hand, and I have half my body, more than half my body still not past the restriction. It's pretty much at that moment that I feel the lines start to pull away from me. And I'm not going anywhere at the moment. I can't move. So I grab the line with my right hand, and I hang on to it because it feels like it's pulling away. And I don't want the reel pulled out of my hands because that would be not good. So the line is pulling. The only thing going through my mind is just, please don't snap. Don't break. And it didn't feel like very much time had passed when the line went dead. It just suddenly, there was no tension on it whatsoever. And I thought to myself, the line is broken. It's gone. So now my main concern is, do I still have a line to get out? I'm stuck head down in a hole at about 125, 130 feet. And I don't know if I still have a exit. So I don't want to pull the line to me. I want as much line still out there as possible, because maybe, just maybe, it broke somewhere towards the exit of that passage, and it's enough for me to get out. And I suspect my dive buddy is probably going to be waiting for me. If he's waiting for me anywhere, he's waiting for me at the exit of this passage where it opens up slightly. So I set the reel down, and I keep a semi-loose grip with it in my right hand because I don't want to lose it, but I also don't want to pull it towards me. So I back up, go forward, back up, go forward, and I can feel myself starting to breathe a little hard. I think it was mostly just nerves. Obviously, I had some concerns that this could be the day. This could be my last dive. And I had to remind myself that I had time. Time was my friend right now. And part of the reason I had time, a very large part of the reason I had time, is that I was diving on a rebreather. I had several hours of available gas to figure this problem out. And I needed to remind myself of that in that moment, because for a brief moment, I'm not going to lie, panic did start to set in. what if I don't get out of here? I could not see. I didn't know if the line was still there. And I didn't know what I was stuck on. I started to think that potentially I had gone through the wrong hole. There was no way for me to know that. I couldn't, as much as I tried to picture what the opening looked like or felt like coming in, it felt completely different going out. So I did the only thing that I could do at the time, and that was just take a moment. I paused. I forced myself to slow down my breathing, and what felt like heavy or hard breathing suddenly became easier, and I started to think about my gear. Specifically, what was on my person that could be hanging up. And what I realized shortly after that was that my left bungee for my left tank had released the tank. And what was happening was, as I was pushing through the opening, the top of the tank, the regulator, specifically because my regulator's face up, was hooked onto a rock, hooked onto the boulder that I was trying to get past. And obviously, the harder I pulled, the more the tank dug in. So I wasn't going anywhere.
Oh.
So what felt like an eternity turned out to be 5.5 minutes. I looked at the dive profile after I got out, and I was in that hole for 5.5 minutes, head down, with my tank firmly attached or grasping the rock behind me, not letting me through that restriction. After I had taken that moment to relax, to slow my breathing, to think about my gear, my dive configuration, it then came to me that the only thing that could be holding me up on that left side, I knew it was on the left side, but I couldn't figure out what. It was either the canister or the tank. I was able to reach the across my chest with my right hand. Again, very gingerly because I still had that line there, and I could move the canister. The canister was free. It's at that moment that I realized that the tank was not where it was supposed to be. So I backed up. I then got my left hand back behind me in the restriction, and I realized, I felt, it was all by touch, that the tank was hanging down. And then obviously I realized that it was locking me in place. So I pulled it up, managed to lay myself down with just now my head pretty much sticking out of that hole. And I got the bungee back on, got the tank situated, got my head back through there, got my shoulders through there, and much to my surprise, I got through a lot easier than I expected. Um, Again, the line, I don't know at this point if the line is broken or not, so I very carefully followed it back out and met with my dive buddy who was beginning to work his way back in. Much as much as he hated it, he had waited long enough and was coming back for me. Fortunately, he had not made it uh, in very far. He was still very much at the entrance, and and he was very happy, about as happy as I was to see him. He was very happy to see my lake. Um, Again, there was some concern there on my part. Brief. This is it kind of moment, but you gotta bring yourself back from that. If you let that emotion control your decision making, that's when you're going to have a bad day. Once again, zero visibility. I have no idea if that's even the same hole I was supposed to be going through. The light is not helping. The line, again, is a concern. Fortunately, it actually was not cut. It came off of the rock, the little corner that I had wrapped it around, which took away all of it gave it a lot of slack, essentially. You know, when I realized that I had all the time I needed to solve this problem, at that point, I wasn't that concerned anymore. Obviously, there's always concern until you make it out, but I wasn't as concerned as that initial moment. That you think this is it, but at that point, my concentration went on to figure out why I was stuck, and again, time's on my side, right? I have all the time in the world here, but only if I'm conscious. So I kept putting my dive computer up to my face because that's the only way I could read the O2 sensors, and I made sure that I had plenty of oxygen in the loop to remain alive. It could have gone differently had I not, thought everything out. But the advantage I had at the time is time, as I mentioned previously. Time was on my side. Would I have been able to get out if I was on open circuit? Yeah, probably. I think I could have. But it would not have been as calming as it was just remembering that I had a lot of time to figure it out. So that's my story. Again, it turned out to be a great dive. I saw a large part of Orange Sink. I didn't complete the circuit. Eventually, I think I will when I have more time to go back there. But it definitely was an experience that I learned a lot from. and I hope that it helps somebody out by hearing that story. I know a lot of people don't like talking about, when things don't go exactly as planned, but I think that's the whole point of this video. Um, you see how messy things can get, and as long as you can work your way through them and get yourself out, they don't have to be, um, they don't have to be life or death every single time. They can be just inconveniences. And if you look at it that way, um, then you have a much better chance of doing this type of diving and not getting into too much trouble. Or you can do what I said I was going to do when I first got cave certified and stick to the mainstream, clear, open, visible, open cave systems with super clear water that are almost impossible to really get into trouble in. But that just wouldn't be as much fun now, would it? Look, look at all the sediment blowing out as I'm trying to undo the reel. That's the fun stuff. Anyhow, I hope you got something out of this and that you enjoyed this video. And I will see you again soon.